What's up, grinders? So today we're going to do a review of Is Dreaming Spanish a Waste of Time? Now before we jump into the review, I've got a few things to say. Now I'm actually seriously considering using Dreaming Spanish to learn Spanish for a number of reasons. The first one being that I often receive comments where people say, you haven't learned via CI, pure CI, so how can you talk as an authority on this? Despite the fact that I've done 390 hours of pure CI for Chinese. So I figure at the end of the day, after my hard Chinese grind, I might actually, I don't know why I said it like that, I might actually do 1 hour a day of Dreaming Spanish, and then a few years from now, I'll be able to talk as more of an authority on this because I would have learned a language without anything else, simply using CI. Now, I am also well aware of the fact that this won't be a very valid test because I'm already very fluent in Esperanto. I speak English and I've dabbled with Latin, so this will pretty much be a cakewalk for me. It'd just be a time investment overall. So why did I speak Spanish, or why did I pick Spanish as opposed to like a different language? Well, for one, Dreaming Spanish is right there. Like the whole website's built out. They've got like 790 hours of content ready to go. I don't have to think about this. I don't want to plan for this. This is not Chinese. I'm not going to actively like try too hard to do anything here because this is not a language that I truly care about. This is more like a testing of the methodology. And I'm also kind of just interested to see what it feels like to learn a language without actually putting in any active work at all. So why don't I choose like a different language then? One where I'm not going to get some like inherent benefit. Well, people suggested Korean. I actually did 5 hours of Korean already. There is various playlists for learning Korean via comprehensible input, but the people who are teaching it, they clearly don't know how to teach using this methodology, or at least they don't know how to teach it very well, because it was a struggle getting through those 5 hours. And also, my Chinese helped quite a bit in some cases, so it wouldn't be a fair judgment anyway, because, for example, one number system is basically just like, because Korean has two ways of counting. Basically, one of the number systems is basically Chinese, just with some variants to it. And finally, this will take me from being trilingual to a polyglot. Yeah, baby! So for me, this will be quite funny because obviously I speak English, Esperanto, and Chinese, but then I would speak finally one last language, and no longer just being a disgusting trilingual speaker, I can take the sacred right of calling myself a polyglot. And by doing that, I can then set on my path, my villain arc of selling you guys the most expensive, useless courses you can possibly imagine. So, watch me as I bend and become your worst enemy. No, I'm joking. Let's begin.
So far, I've tracked over 800 hours using Dreaming Spanish. Is it any good? Does it work? What can you expect at each level?
So I've done 1,000 hours of Chinese. This would be interesting to see.
Well, I've watched every single Dreaming Spanish video in the Spanish from Spain, as well as an absolute ton of the Latin American ones too. So I'm going to walk you through the platform.
Sorry, I'm just looking at this, and obviously this is the Day of the Dead, but this brings back like almost sad memories for me because I almost convinced my wife for us to do a zombie wedding. Like, I swear to God, she was on board until someone like from her friends said something, and then she was like all not on board anymore, and I was so sad because we almost had a full zombie wedding.
And my experience. So for context, I have been using Dreaming Spanish for about a year now, so the 800 hours that I've got has been in just over 12 months. That number also includes the time I spent not only using Dreaming Spanish videos, but also using Spanish Uncovered, as well as some crosstalk lessons, podcasts and YouTube, but the vast majority of...
So if I actually do this, and you'll know if I actually do this because I'll start uploading like progress videos as I go, you know, maybe 100 hours, 200 hours. I don't know when I should be uploading progress videos, but I will make sure to avoid any form of any other study, just be pure CI, because I want to be able to talk about that from a position of authority in a few years.
Of that number has been using Dreaming Spanish. So you know the general format. Pablo or one of the tutors, guides, hosts, whatever we're saying. Anyway, they'll talk about something only in Spanish and they'll make it more comprehensible by drawing or explaining it or varying their vocabulary depending on your level. The premise is based on comprehensible input. You focus on understanding the message and the content is adapted for you. And then hopefully you'll naturally understand.
So one thing I personally believe about comprehensible input is if you actually do speak a number of languages, especially ones that are related to your next target language, then it's probably not that bad of a methodology. But I still reckon it would be way more faster to just learn the language via active methodologies.
Understand the language without having to resort to translation. Pablo explains the theory behind this if you want to know about it on the methods section of the website. Basically, our brains form a model of the language in our heads without us consciously having to force it. So with enough input, we can acquire all of the language, including all of the grammar. So if you're watching the videos and you're not sure if you're learning anything, something very cool happened to me early on in using it that made me realize
I've actually seen a lot of videos of people who have done the Dreaming Spanish actual method. So I've seen videos of people at 300 hours, 500 hours, 1,500, 2,000 hours. And basically they start speaking around the 1,500 hour mark, which would probably be like 2 years from now for me.
How powerful it is. So I was very much a beginner when my brother-in-law's wife, which I think in English is my sister-in-law, I'm not sure, let me know in the comments, she said in Spanish to my niece, come tus fresas, which means eat your strawberries. And in that moment I was like, I didn't have to think come. Yeah, I remember that's comer, tus, which is yours, fresas, so strawberries. But yeah, that's eat your strawberries, by which time everybody's finished eating and they've left the room. Instead of that, come tus fresas. Boom, like I was hit by lightning or something.
Okay, so what he's talking about there is that instant understanding of the language without having to do any processing. You can actually easily get this external to a method like this. So you just basically build audio cards with the words that you're wanting to learn, and you just listen to them. And you listen to them and you'll get the same effect eventually. Because basically what happens with a CI methodology is it just draws it out over a very long period of time, and you just keep hearing it here, there, and there. But you can actually, do targeted listening.
I instantly understood. There was no pause, no translating. It was like it was said in English. But if English was Spanish, and I was fluent in Spanish, if you know what I mean. So from that point on, I was sold on the idea of massive amounts of input without trying to break down all the nuts and bolts. My only job would be to...
I know this will work. I've seen people actually use this method before. It'd just be very inefficient. However, for me, it might be actually less inefficient because I've got a ton of cognates, and also I know the grammar of Esperanto, which basically replicates Spanish grammar in a lot of ways. So this will probably be a lot faster for me.
To try and understand the videos by Pablo and the team. Now, I made it my goal, first of all, to watch every Dreaming Spanish video. And after a while, I changed that so that my goal was to watch all of the videos from speakers from Spain. And the reason being, I felt that it would help my understanding of grammar if people were sticking to using either vosotros instead of ustedes, which varies depending on where the speaker's from. If you're watching TV or listening to podcasts or anything like that, the speakers could be from any Spanish-speaking countries. So being used to both is still a necessity, though if you speak, it kind of makes sense to use either one or the other, which is why I later decided on to focus on the Spanish from Spain. Let me take you through my experience right from the beginning. I saw the YouTube channel and jumped straight in, and I went to the website and I signed up and got the premium content too. If you're not a premium user, let me say this, the experience is way, way better on the website. It's not simply that it has more content, but there are a lot more features that really help to improve the experience. So once you're on the landing page, you log on and you're greeted with the...
So I guess I'm gonna have to get premium.
Watch page. You have a ton of filters here where you can watch videos depending on the level you're at or the topic you're interested in, the accent you might want to hear. So I love going through Sandra's, Alma's and Pablo's videos. It really feels like...
I guess I'd probably be more focused on South American accents, because if I imagine I'm actually going to travel anywhere and use this language, which is pretty unlikely, I would probably go to South America.
Over time, you get to know the host, which is a bit weird because I've never spoken to them. I've watched some videos multiple times, and I don't know if that updates the total number of videos watched, but it's not really important. Basically, it still records your minutes in the same way. Something that is worth saying is that if you watch it through the website, there are no adverts. So if you're used to watching it on YouTube, the experience is going to be so much better through the website. And the website is configured for mobile too, so you have all the functionality that you have on your phone as you would have on the desktop anyway. The only thing I
did like that about the actual Dreaming Spanish website, where it just tracks your minutes automatically for you. This is why I think it's probably the ultimate lazy man's method if you just don't care about getting there anytime soon.
Notice is that sometimes the autoplay doesn't seem to work on my phone in the same way. I don't know if it's my phone or what, but you have to sometimes tap play to play the next video, which is not the end of the world actually, but if you're watching more of the advanced videos, I'm often doing something else at the same time, like cooking or something like that, something I don't have to think that much about, but it does mean that if my hands are busy, I have to stop and then go and press play.
Are you meant to be doing that? Because I'm pretty sure, well, I guess if you're advanced, you probably understand everything you're hearing anyway, but isn't the purpose that you actually focus, you actively just sit there and focus on it? That way you pick up stuff. But if you've got your attention elsewhere, you're probably not going to pick up new stuff. You're just going to reinforce old stuff.
In the year I've been using it, there have been an absolute ton of updates, so I'm sure that'll get ironed out in due course anyway. You will have an idea of the types of content you get just from obviously watching the YouTube channel. There are different hosts and they will speak about different topics, which might be short stories, cultural events. Some of the topics can be a bit random, but I would say that your experience improves as your Spanish gets better because the hosts are then able to talk more freely about the different subjects without having to rely on the visual prompts. So the super beginner videos rely heavily on the visual clues from pictures and drawings, and that means that you can start to understand Spanish without having to rely on any translations. And as you go through the levels, of course, eventually the hosts just explain new words or concepts in Spanish without having to resort to drawing any pictures or anything else like that. The super beginner videos are not as engaging as the advanced videos, but I think just focusing on picking up the language makes the process enjoyable.
I think the thing that's probably going to interest me the most about this method is actually just learning via the context completely and not having to actually do any form of like planning or active study. I know that obviously active study and planning is going to be way more efficient, but at the end of the day, I'm not really caring too much about this language. So it'll be a very cool experience to just realize after a while, oh, okay, so I know a lot more than I did before.
Enough. I think you have to try to enjoy the process of increasing your understanding initially rather than necessarily finding the content fascinating. But ultimately, it's hard to produce content that is hugely compelling when you literally know zero Spanish. So in some of the older videos, the audio quality isn't as great, and
I know what they're talking about because I actually taught Esperanto using the direct method. So for those who don't know what the direct method is, it's basically pure CI. The difference is it's a lesson in the language itself. And I have an entire YouTube channel. It hasn't got many videos on it, but I think it's got like 16 or 17 videos where I taught Esperanto using, it's literally called Esperanto Comprehensible Input. It used to be called Esperanto Direct Method, and that's what it uses. I changed the name simply because most people don't know the term direct method, and just comprehensible input's a lot faster to find. So I'm not against the methodology overall. I just feel like if you have like a desire to get to a high level within the language faster, then it's not the best method. However, there is lots of people who love to use like a CI methodology, and I'm not against that. And hell, like what I'm doing right now, I'm planning to use it for a language where I'm not too invested in.
not all the hosts are as good as the more experienced ones, but with the sheer number of hours you need to watch, I wouldn't really worry at all. Some of the older videos don't have the same quality as the newer ones, but there's still something rustic and charming about them, and Evildea is still hilarious. Ultimately, the production quality doesn't really matter if the method works, right? Some of the earlier videos, by that I mean the beginner and super beginner ones, they are way more basic. But as a complete beginner, you can't expect to have hugely compelling content. But once you get to, say, like a more intermediate level, there's a lot more stuff to get your teeth.
You know, it's actually funny for me is that the super beginner videos so far have been quite compelling, not due to the content, but due to the fact that when I'm listening, I'm like, oh, that's basically Esperanto. That's English. And then I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's Latin. Like, I'm listening to it and just like spotting the languages that I know type of thing.
Teeth into. So Pablo did a series on the history of Spain, for example, which was awesome, and the Spanish in it wasn't too difficult. More of that for other Latin American countries would be great as well, like the history of Mexico, for example, would be awesome to see. And I'd say in the future it'd be kind of cool to have some like more formal interviews or even some easier documentaries for learners. You also have the progress page. So I found this amazing, genuinely. First of all, the surprising thing I found was the benefit in it automatically just tracking your hours. Every minute you watch, it instantly updates the number of hours you've done. This gives you a little bit of serotonin each time you see that number go up. So yes, you could try and break down the numbers here a bit more and present it differently, but honestly, this is pretty simple and I think it does the job. You can scroll down and see the levels below. So here it will tell you more detail on the level you're at, what you need to do at your current level, and also you can click on the others to see.
One thing I don't think I'll ever do is the crosstalk though. I don't really have too much of an interest in crosstalk. I'm bringing it up because crosstalk is actually mentioned as part of the roadmap. But to me, I feel like crosstalk is actually just a waste of my time. So if I'm going to jump into a lesson, I want to speak the language and hear the language. So if they recommend, oh, you should be doing crosstalk, but you shouldn't be speaking yet because it can impact on your ability to speak this language correctly, then I'm just not going to talk yet. I'm not going to sit here and like do English with like Spanish in this weird hybrid mix. I'm going to do just Spanish or I'm not going to do it at all.
What to expect as you move forward. Now, I thought this was an absolute goldmine if you're a less experienced learner, and the advice is absolutely solid. What I found interesting about the numbers page was that you can work out where you're going to be in the future and at what time you're likely to reach that level. That is, of course, providing on average you hit your target daily hours. You can see what.
One thing people need to be aware about with Dreaming Spanish, it's pretty much everywhere, is that the roadmap actually, at the beginning stages, is pretty accurate, but later on it's not very accurate at all. Like I've seen plenty of videos where people have done, 1,500 hours plus, and they're like, yeah, no, realistically, I'm not quite where they say I should be yet, so it seems like the roadmap is probably off by a couple of hundred hours, at least in the later stages.
That means however many hours a month in total, which means in 2 months I'll be here, in 3 months I'll be here, and it also makes you realise that an extra 30 minutes a day can really, really rack up over time. I found it really motivating to be able to work out at what stage I was going to reach each level. There's also this section here where you can put in your own hours and do stuff like crosstalk lessons or listening to podcasts, so you're not
Yeah, so he's mentioning crosstalk there. Yeah, I wouldn't be interested in that at all. If you have done a lot of crosstalk, let me know what your thoughts are on it in the comments section.
Fine to just using Dreaming Spanish videos. You can top up your total number of hours so that it's accurate here. So let's talk about the price. $8. That's it. It's such insanely good value for money that even if you don't use it all the time, it's still worth it. There are resources out there that are far more expensive and far less effective. I feel like in a review,
Yeah, no, that's a really good value proposition right there. $8 and you get like a bunch more videos and stuff. Like, I wasted money on so many more things.
should say something else about this, but there's nothing else to say. It's just really good value. This isn't sponsored. I'm not making any money from this. This is just my honest opinion. There are an insane number
I don't take sponsorships on this channel. Just so you guys are aware, I don't bother with that stuff because this is not my full-time job.
of videos as well. So for your $8, I think it says there are 2,500 private videos, but I think that number's probably gone up by now. And that doesn't even include all the public videos as well. So I don't know when the number was updated. Basically, you get an absolute mountain of content for your $8. So in terms of functionality, you can actually download the videos to watch or listen to offline. I've never done it, but should the mood strike you and you're trekking Everest and you really feel like you need to listen to Andrea Lemekikan on the top of Everest, you can do so with your downloaded videos. Oh, and there is a podcast feed as well. Did you know that? Basically, the videos have the audio downloaded. If you're a premium member, you can get a bit of code in the resources bit under your profile and pop that into whatever podcast app you use, so you don't need to worry about the videos and you can have that in the background 24/7 if you wanted to. It is a useful feature. I don't use it personally, as I prefer to just play the videos and they can automatically record my minutes, and I can use the filters to get the right videos or something at the right level. Or
I'm not really adding anything right now because he's just talking about features.
For me at the minute, the right accent, but you might find it useful, so it's good to know that it's an option for you. And beyond all this, there's a poster covering all the different levels and the language learning process. That is basically a map for you to follow, as well as the more detailed breakdown of the levels on the
So we've got level 1 starting from 0, then you've got some common words, level 2. So what's this say? Like, what common words? So go home, eat cake. I reckon I'll probably get to that in like 25 hours just due to the fact of Esperanto, basically. And then you've got level 3 is you follow topics that are adapted for learners. Okay. Level 4, you can understand a person speaking to you patiently.
Progress page. So what was my experience of the process? Yes, especially in the beginning, some of the content wasn't as engaging as I would have liked. But you have to think, if you've got a limited vocabulary, you can't expect to have a story where you're engrossed in it if you don't yet know much Spanish. So I say,
that's a problem with like literally any language learning method. Like, it doesn't matter. You just got to grind through those initial stages.
first of all, focus on the novelty of understanding stuff in Spanish and be content with that first of all. You have to focus on the fact that over time, eventually you'll get more enjoyable content, and you will. The method does take faith. You have to trust that your brain's going to figure it out, and it definitely will. I'm now using native material, which I can understand as part of my daily input.
One thing I do want to say is that yes, this will work. It's just going to take a very long time as compared to, say, any other method of learning. But people then take this and go, yeah, well, it's not that bad. And then they try to apply it to other languages like Chinese. And it doesn't work like that, because Chinese has nothing in common with English. Spanish has a ton in common with English. And even though you're not actively studying, your brain is working behind the scenes. It's looking for templates, and it's seeing these cognates, it's seeing the similar templates within grammatical patterns between English and Spanish, and it's applying those. And then over time, it's like cutting them apart from English, and it's basically just becoming pure Spanish at that stage. But there is so much in common with the two languages that's why it works. But if you take it to Chinese, it can work. It's just going to take you probably 3, 4, maybe 5 times longer than someone who just actively puts in study as well as doing something like this. Obviously, I can't prove that. There's very few people who have used pure CI, and I'm not talking about Refold. Refold's not pure CI. There's literally only a couple of people that I'm aware of who have done that or attempting to do that. There's one guy who's actually learning Thai that's using basically the same methodology, and he regularly posts updates. I think his last update was like 1,300 hours or something. And the types of conversations he was talking about in his post were the equivalent of what I was doing at like 500 hours in Chinese. So you can see that there's already a very big difference in basically how long it takes you to get to a certain level using these methodologies. But again, there are no studies on this. Like, the perfect study would be tracked over a period of 10 years. You take, I don't know, 20 people who learn using active methods and then 20 people that use just pure comprehensible input, nothing else. And you see how they go after 10 years. But obviously, we're not going to get that type of study anytime soon. Maybe if this YouTube channel ever gets to like 1 million subs and I make enough money, I would fund that study.
And I haven't done any studying. I've made the mistake though in thinking that somehow being able to follow along with a video means that it's about the right level. The aim isn't to say, oh, I just about understood that advanced video, so now I'm at an advanced level, because if you only just about understand.
People also underestimate how much the visual cues help you to understand. So if you watch the video and you're like, wow, I understand a ton of that, put your hand in front of your eyes and just re-listen to it, and you'll notice how much you actually don't understand.
Did it, you're probably missing out on the stuff that you would pick up on if you had greater context for what you were watching. After all, it's not only knowing the words that are said, but you also need to pick up on the grammar implicitly, and you are not going to do that if you're struggling to understand what's going on. I think, and Pablo says this on the website, that you should try and watch videos that are quite easy, that you mostly understand, rather than trying to watch stuff that's too difficult, basically. So at this point, I have well over 800 hours, and I'm now moving on to using just advanced stuff for learners and easier native content, and I haven't studied at all. And that's largely thanks to Dreaming Spanish. So thank you, Pablo and the team. I've got into a habit where I watch and listen every single day, and over time, those hours have just racked up quite easily. So not only has this helped me learn Spanish, it's also cemented how I feel about language learning, and I feel like I've got a greater understanding of the process of acquisition for my brain at the very least. I'm still not speaking, so it will be interesting when I do. I feel like I'm hoping this is...
Yeah, so you can see there's already a problem there. He's still not speaking, and he won't be speaking until probably 1,500 hours from what I've seen.
Given me at least a solid and natural feeling for Spanish, and even though I'm not speaking, I can now watch native content and count that towards my daily hours of input, which is amazing because now I literally just watch YouTube.
But again, for me, that doesn't really matter, so I don't care about Spanish too much. But if I can get the benefit of watching, like, say, Hollywood movies or something in Spanish, at least then I'm getting some value out of it. In fact, that's something that really annoys me about Chinese, is that there is almost nothing that from Western media dubbed into Chinese. There's very, very few things that are dubbed into Chinese. But you go onto Netflix and literally everything's dubbed into the most random European languages like Ukrainian and obviously Spanish being a big one. But like that also always annoys me at the end of the day. I'll go click and I'll look at the dubs and they'll be like all these European languages, Japanese, and I'll be like, sad face, no Chinese.
Stuff that I would watch anyway, but it just happens to be in Spanish, and I'm acquiring Spanish.
Yeah, that'll basically be what I do eventually, is I'll just start watching movies that I've watched in the past in Spanish that were originally English movies.
Without any effort at all. So in my opinion, this is what the future of language learning is going to look like, and I personally am very excited. So of course...
No, this definitely won't be the future of language learning. Like, I understand more and more people are interested in this methodology right now, but they don't realize how many hours realistically you're going to need to put in, even for a language that's considered simple, such as Spanish. So let's just go online and see how long the Defense Institute says you should need for Spanish. So you can see right here, the FSI estimates that you're going to need at least 600 hours for Spanish. This guy's already passed 600 hours. Now, obviously, this doesn't include self-study that they highly recommend you do after these classroom hours, but also it doesn't account for the fact that classroom hours generally are very inefficient means of learning because you're dragged down to whatever level the people are around you. So if you're only starting to speak at 1,500 hours, while this reckons that you need 600 hours, you can see that there's a twofold inefficiency right here. Now, this is for a simple language that's similar to English in many different ways. So you can imagine that if you try to extrapolate this and apply it to, say, Chinese or Korean or these other languages. So it's not going to be the future of language learning, except for those people who are just happy to, dwindle away those hours over the years like me.
I recommend it. Hopefully over time some of the content will become more compelling for learners, but it's worked for me. Slight flex, but just to show you, if I change the filter to all of Spain, voila. Genuinely, it was actually a bit of a happy, sad moment. It was a sense of achievement, but also like, what do I do now? Another resource I used was Audiowitch's Spanish Uncovered, which is where I really started my journey with Spanish. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck and enjoy.
Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the video. Obviously, I wasn't critiquing this video because I was just looking into the methodology, and I figured I'd share my thoughts with you guys. If you like this video, let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you think about my plans of learning Spanish as just kind of like a side thing I do for an hour a day. And that's it. We're now at the end of this video, so don't forget to join the Discord. There'll be a link in the pinned comment. And also, something like 70% of you keep coming back, but you haven't subbed yet. What's going on, bro? You don't like me or something?